we're back. It's Wednesday. How are you doing, Brandon? It's another fine Wednesday.
It really is. Yeah, it's a beautiful day. I'm doing great. Although I had some bicycle injuries. Oh, I guess you can see them there on my hand, and got bandages on my elbows from a spill I took over the holiday weekend. But I'm okay. Nothing's broken. Nothing's damaged. Just
Oh,
just some cuts and
good.
bruises.
For our viewers at home, Brandon has some band-aids on his palms. That looks ouchy.
Yeah, I'm missing a lot of skin on this hand where I caught
Ooh.
myself after flipping over the handlebars.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a very eventful 4th of July long weekend. For those who are joining
Yeah.
us internationally, we had a nice long 3-day weekend here in the States. So I'm feeling refreshed. I'm feeling good. How has your week been, Brandon?
Ooh, I've got a bunch of things in progress. So shameless plug for Get Trends, aka the app of the show. It's an open source app that you can find in the iOS and Android app stores. If you are also an open source developer, you have a bunch of repos on GitHub and you can't keep track of all of them and need to know which ones are trending, getting lots of views and clones, stars, you can check out gittrends.com, GITTRENDS. It's a totally open source app that is written in C# using Xamarin, and it will help you keep track of all your GitHub repos. It'll send you push notifications if one of your repos blows up because maybe somebody tweets about it or puts it in a blog post. And the announcement is you can check out, there's an open pull request on this repo where me and Luis, the other maintainer, have been hard at work adding in a new feature where not only will you be able to see your repos, which you can today. So if you download the app from the App Store, you'll see all of your repos once you connect to GitHub and all their stats. But we're going to add in the ability to see organizations you belong to as well. So it's adding a bunch of new stuff to the UI and the settings page to enable that. But you can follow our progress. Hopefully we'll have that new release. It's probably still a couple months away. You know, it's a free app. We just do the work on nights and weekends. We don't get paid to do any of this. So, but yeah, spent a lot of time last night working on that, feeling really good about it. And
Nice.
I've also been teasing some, speaking of Xamarin, the Xamarin Community Toolkit
Yes.
is also an open source repo that you can use for all your Xamarin apps. It's kind of that, it's a toolkit. So it's basically all that code you probably copy paste from Xamarin app to Xamarin app. All those common features that you wish were just included in, say, Xamarin Forms. Well, we got them in the toolkit. So we've also been working hard on making the toolkit work with, make sure it's compatible with .NET MAUI, which is coming down the pike. That'll be included in .NET 6 in November. And we've got an announcement. I was just chatting with one of the maintainers today that we'll probably announce next week about how we're going to expand on the toolkit and maybe unify with another toolkit. I don't know. We'll
Okay.
just have to stay tuned for the announcement. But
Wow, that's exclusive. That's exciting.
yeah, you're here to hear first.
Very, very exciting. Well, I can't wait to hear. Any I guess can you share any exciting pieces or things? Like, I don't know, is it or are you still kind of in stealth mode with it?
I mean, I'd say it's pretty official internally. I mean, the biggest hurdle is not necessarily the technical stuff, but because Microsoft's such a big company and there's so many stakeholders, especially in the .NET ecosystem, the Xamarin ecosystem, the MAUI ecosystem,
Right.
getting everybody on board. So we have to align with the .NET engineering teams, the .NET marketing teams, the docs teams, so we can put all the docs up about this new repo we're working on. But it's pretty much official. So we're going to be, or I'm literally going to be typing up these blog post announcements today. Then we'll go through more approval processes, but we're getting really close, and it feels really real. It's something we've wanted to do and we talk about for months. So hopefully we'll get those announcements out next week. So stay tuned, my .NET friends, my Xamarin friends. Check the .NET blog and the Xamarin blog next week for some big, fun new announcements.
Find yourself someone who talks as passionately about Xamarin as Brandon does. I just love that you're like the Xamarin hype man and always have been ever since I've met you. This is your life.
It's the
I love
best.
it.
I love it.
Let's see. Ooh, I have something fun to share.
Ooh.
I started my Got Bots series last week with the Microsoft Reactor, and it was really fun. And I'm sharing my screen right now if you want to share it, Brandon. And for
Ooh.
folks listening to the podcast, I will describe what's on the screen. Um, Last minute, friend of the show, PJ joined to talk about all of the awesome diva bots that we've created over the last year. I guess it's been now. And I just had to share this hilarious screenshot. I'll zoom in even more of an actual tweet that PJ used to test his just bot paid Twitter bot that says, I can't believe it's working. And I just felt this was such a developer test tweet for testing the Twitter API. But we had a bunch of fun, and you can check that out if you go to aka.ms/gotbots1, I believe. Also make sure to share it on Twitter as well. But you can check out that really fun video where PJ, oh my gosh, we walk through our Britney Spears bot, our Mariah Carey bot, our Ariana Grande bot. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Our NSYNC bot, so many bots. Shania Twain, how can I forget? The original Shania Twain. So check that out. I'm doing every Thursday at the Reactor at 3 p.m., 2 p.m. I should know this. I am doing a series on bots for beginners. So last week we talked all about ethical bot creation, which is really fun. Essentially talking about t-shirt bots. Do you know what a t-shirt bot is, Brandon?
Ooh, can I take a guess?
Sure, sure. While
Is
you do,
it
I'm gonna look up the tweet.
is it a bot that will make a t-shirt about what you're maybe tweeting about?
Okay, yes, but we had a really interesting conversation on the show because I hate t-shirt bots. And the reason is I come from a family of artists. I know how important it is for artists to get paid for their work. And something really weird happened one time when I posted a photo of me wearing this shirt. And for folks at home, this is a shirt. It's a purple shirt that says girls just want to have fundamental human rights. And a bunch of people started commenting, I need this shirt. I want this on a shirt. And there are bots that will find those keywords and they will make the shirt. Like they'll just take the text from the shirt and create the shirt and put it out there. So I
Wow.
learned this and I did my own test where I tweeted an image. And if for those listening on the podcast, it's the meme of SpongeBob that's very popular that says, I tweeted about this design and all I got with this was this unlicensed shirt from a Twitter bot. And I've tried this multiple times, Brandon. I've done this also with an Arrested Development image, if I can find it. Here we go. And it works every time. I tweet an image or something with text and I say, I'm testing something, comment on this, I want this on a shirt or something of that nature. And these shirt bots will instantly, just kind of they're just scraping the internet looking for these keywords. So we did a really interesting lesson on when you're thinking about building bots, it's important to think about does this hurt or abuse anyone? Does this harass anyone? And I thought this was such a great example, right? Like how many times, of course, this is a silly example here, but how many times does this happen to artists when their image or text or something that they've created gets resold on a third party site? Like what is this, T-Chip or something? So we talked a lot about good bots and bad bots. Which are you?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that as you were describing it. It's like somebody probably owns the rights to these images or to the
Right.
text, and the bot just makes it. Like, I don't know, something doesn't sound quite legal there, but good to know.
It's something
That's
interesting that I learned because someone that I follow on Instagram who's an artist sells enamel pins. And I learned through this account, they did like an Instagram story that shared if you don't have, and I notice this now when I turn around any enamel pin, and I encourage all of you to check out your own enamel pins. If it doesn't on the back have an engraving that has like a registered trademark or copyright, it's basically free reign for anyone to copy, which is why we see, even places like Urban Outfitters or Wish, especially, or some of these resale markets reselling people's art without paying for it essentially. So this is my PSA that if you're building software in general, and especially if you're building bots, don't do this. This is not good. But you can learn all about that on the stream. We talk all about ethical bots, diva bots, all the bots really.
That's right. That's aka.ms/gotbots1, the
Yeah.
numeral 1.
And soon when you go to aka.ms/gotbots, it'll take you to a lovely Dev2 post with all of the summaries of the episodes. That's my afternoon today. Yeah, so check that out. And then also I got to host the Static Web Apps Conf last week. And that was super fun. I learned all about Azure Static Web Apps. There are a bunch of announcements. John Papa keynoted it. And yeah, we even had some, I thought of you, Brandon, because we not only talked about Disney a little bit on it, because John Papa worked at Disney and at before, and one of the first websites I ever went to was the 101 Dalmatian live action movie static webpage. But yeah, we also talked about GeoCities, MySpace, all of the fun stuff that we talk about on this show. So you can check that out at aka.ms/SWAconf. Yeah, that was my week. It was very busy.
Yeah, big announcement day.
Yes, but I think we need to bring in our guests because we have a lot to talk about. Should I? I'm going to enter this person because we're going to get all into their origin story today. But let me tell you about the origin story of our guest in my life. So once upon a time, back in the days where we could meet in person for conferences, I was at Twilio's Signal conference in San Francisco, and I was on Twitter tweeting about Tony Hawk because Tony Hawk was giving a talk. Did not mean to make that rhyme. And I immediately found this individual on the interwebs, and I was like, oh my gosh, this person's going to be my friend. We hung out for the whole day. They showed me all of the cool design stuff they were doing, and they said, what's your job? What do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a developer evangelist or developer advocate. And she said, ooh, I want to do that. And now she works on the same team as me. She works at Microsoft here with us. Welcome to the show, Cloud Advocate, April.
Hi,
April.
everyone. How are you?
Welcome to the show. I can't believe this is your first time on the show. I feel like we've talked about you a lot on the show.
All the time.
Aww.
All good things.
But for the folks at home, tell them about yourself.
Yeah, I will preface this by saying that I hear we're doing a lot of exclusives today and announcements. So I have an exclusive for you all later. But in any case, and you're literally the first large audience to know, because so far I've only told my boyfriend. So in any case, I'm April Speight, and I work within spatial computing at Microsoft, and I do things within the area of mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, and basically I don't live in reality. I live in what's a fake world most of the time, if you will, and I prefer it that way. But in any case, I've been working in this area for officially 1.5 years, unofficially 2 years, but my programming background is in Python, but my actual career background, where I spent the most amount of my time, has been in project management and program management. Before that, I worked in the luxury fashion industry. I was a menswear stylist as well as a visual merchandiser. And basically, I got to create art, which was fun. So if you're unfamiliar with what visual merchandising is, it includes working on store windows. So if you ever walked past, I feel like there's not too many places that make them as fancy nowadays, but if you ever go to New York during the holidays, and if you walk past Bergdorf Goodman, their elaborate sort of windows, that's what I did. And then not for Bergdorf's, but for other companies. And then also that has to do with moving things around in the store, whether it be the way that clothes are laid out, yada, yada. The whole point was to make you all want to buy it. And believe it or not, there's been times where we've had like a pile of clothes maybe it was, let's say it was like a sweatshirt. It's been folded up. It's been about a month. No one's touching it. And then believe it or not, you can move it to the right, restyle it, and all of a sudden it flies off the shelf. And it's just
this sounds like UX
wow.
for clothes.
Yes, pretty much. That's pretty much what it is. And a lot of it comes down to psychology somehow. But that's what I did. And then styling. Menswear was my preferred. I did some wear as much as some women's wear too, but working with men and dressing them, in my opinion, was more fun. And after a while, I realized that it didn't pay much to do either of those, unless you worked in corporate and you were the one that was telling people what to do. So I figured, okay, I need something else that's going to be sustainable long term. And I had this background in project management. So then I said, all right, I'm gonna go be a project manager. Didn't know at the time that most of the jobs in project management were in IT, and I had no IT background on paper, but I knew computers. And so when I interviewed for an internship that was literally IT project management intern, like what are the odds that it's like exact title? My senior director at the time, when he did his interview with me, he literally walked in, looked at my resume, and he said, do you like computers? And I said, yeah. And he was like, that's all I need to know. So
Much better than whiteboarding.
Yeah.
I like that interview.
Yes, absolutely. And, to be fair for folks at home, I did have a more formal interview prior to that with the person who became my manager, where we actually talked through my history. But for the person who was higher than her, that's literally what he came in and said. He was a very, very great leader for our entire IT department. But I did that. The first time I did anything remotely close to programming was running SQL reports. I had 30 minutes to learn. We had an individual who was retiring early, and we were dividing up his tasks. Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you why 30 minutes. So one of our guys on our team, he was retiring, and we divided up all of his workload, and all that was left was running SQL reports. And so at that point, I volunteered because I said, oh, I'm interested in that. And he only had 30 minutes before he had to go. So that's why I only had 30 minutes to learn. And so he gave me the quickest crash course possible. And fortunately for me, I had a background in logic. And so as it relates to like philosophy, because I did some philosophy in undergrad, and a lot of that has to do with not logic. I'm sorry, y'all. Syntax. I had 6 majors in college, but anyways, wow. I had a background with syntax because I was studying linguistics. At one point was my major. And so that helped a lot. For me, I was able to understand patterns of putting together what I needed for SQL reports. So that's how, once he left, I just kept at it. I feel like this was before Googling programming concepts was really like a thing, because there wasn't like that much online. And so there weren't all these like fabulous online courses or YouTube videos that you can go try out. So it was a lot of kind of self-learning. I did that, and I was still doing PM work. Some time went by, different companies, still doing PM work. And then I decided, all right, I think I want to do some programming. I thought I wanted to do data science. And so that's how I started with Python. And then I realized I hated data science. And then I said, okay, I need to use this programming skill that I now have learned. And so I discovered chatbots through Twilio, actually. And I feel like that only really came to be because I went to a Twilio T event, and I felt so behind going through all of the activities that day. And the thing about me is, if I feel like I don't get something and everyone else does, I'm going to work my butt off to figure it out. And that's really what happened. I spent the next like 3 months or so really strengthening my Python background, because mind you, I didn't go to school for programming, and I had to do it on my own in my free time. And so I started doing that. Got really into working with chatbots and AI assistants. And then I also started doing YouTube videos, because for me personally, the best way for me to learn is to teach. And then I also figured that like I couldn't be the only person that had issues with learning with some of the different online free courses that are out here on the internet, as well as some of the different YouTube videos. And so I started relating programming concepts to the thing I knew best, which was fashion, as well as like pop culture movies like Mean Girls, for example. So I was doing that. And then that's when I got quote unquote discovered by my acquisitions editor at Wiley, my publisher, and he had reached out and asked, did I think about writing a book? I thought I was being catfished, and I went on LinkedIn. Turns out he was very much real. And
I should also pause here and say, all of this stuff that April is talking about happened in the last 4 years, I want to say, right? This is
Yeah.
like
Wow.
all
Yeah.
happening in a very short amount of time. And
Yep.
being April's friend makes me both proud and exhausted.
You never know
Also,
what's
for
next.
the people at home who are listening to April's story about working in, you said fashion merchandising. What you cannot see and what I recommend taking a look at on our YouTube is just how beautiful April's background is, and I want to buy everything in the background of this image. So it shows in your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Once I got quote unquote discovered for technical writing, I wrote my first book, which is Bite Size Python, Introduction to Python Programming. And then after that, I wrote a second book, Visual Studio Code for Python Programmers, which if this was a chance where we had graphics, I would say exclusive, because the book is available as of today to purchase and have it mailed to you. So if you happen to either go to, we're sharing a link as well, but also on my website, vogueandcode.com. That's VOGUEANDCODE. Or you can go to aprilspeight.com. It'll redirect there. There is a section on my site that points you to links for the book. But for the newest book, not that everyone loves Amazon, but if you go in there, you'll see that it is available for order now. We were doing pre-orders for a couple of months, but literally today is the day where it's like officially out. And so if you get it today, which is the 7th, it'll arrive Friday, which is 2 days from now, if my math is right. So,
right now.
So yeah, I wrote that. I discovered mixed reality thanks to Twitter. I saw a demo that was happening at one of our Microsoft conferences. And it wasn't that they were using a HoloLens. It was more so that they were doing real-time speech translation with the HoloLens during like a conference kind of call. And so the whole speech part is what got me, because as I mentioned, I briefly was a linguistics major. So foreign languages is like my thing. And I asked for help to get started. I got some folks at Microsoft to help out, some folks from Magic Leap to help out. And then I was learning. 6 months later, I joined my team here at Microsoft. And that's where I've been since, still learning as new things are coming out. And I feel like with that particular tech area, you never know what's going to happen next. And we refer to it as emerging tech. So it's emerging. And again, you just never know what's new. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, no big deal. Just like learned a new language, wrote a book about it. I love all of this.
I love that you went from hating Python to literally writing 2 books on it.
What are the odds, right?
It's like the most quintessential example of a love-hate relationship.
Yeah. And it took some work too, because I feel that for our job in DevRel, we write different type of content, tutorials and what have you. And when it comes to technical writing, especially when you're doing like a programming, like for a programming like introduction, you really like have to humble yourself, or more so it humbles you, because you start to realize what you actually don't know. And fortunately, my technical editor, I got to choose who it was, and he had written books on Python for like probably as long as I've been alive. So I was very fortunate to have him. He definitely was patient with everything. But when it comes to book writing, yeah, you might feel like you're an expert heading into it. And then when you start trying to explain the why behind certain things, it's like, oh, you know what? I don't know why. And so it's a humbling process. It is definitely a humbling process. And if you don't do well with receiving feedback, likely it's going to be challenging for you, because as many folks that I've spoken with who have written books, the one common thing is getting edits back from the editor, and like things are all comments here, comments there, delete this, delete that. And it's just like, I spent 2 weeks writing this. Great.
By 2 weeks.
Yeah. But, for any of you who do pursue book writing, especially in the technical area, I think my manager said it best, is just that your editors really want you to succeed. They want the book to succeed as well. So all the feedback that you get, yeah, it might sometimes be like a hit to your ego, but the whole purpose is to make sure that the book is successful. So if you keep that in the back of your head, throw yourself a little pity party for like 10 minutes and then just get back to writing. So that's one thing I can definitely recommend if you decide to write technical books.
Love it. And even in the comments, Rob McDonald saying it's the old Dunning-Kruger effect, where he said he thought he knew so much more about Python before going further in depth with it. And it's so true. I feel like as programmers, we there's high highs and low lows. So you have this amazing high where maybe you just published your app or your website or whatever it might be, and you're like, I'm the best developer in the world. And then you try to like fix a bug and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I don't know anything.
Computers are usually like metal or plastic, and I'm shocked that they don't just come like in a foam, like a Nerf gun like foam, because my want and desire to throw my computer, especially when I first started programming and just like could not figure out certain bugs, even today, really. I feel like we need to make these things less damage prone, because it's true. Like one day, I remember vividly, April and I have worked on a project together where she stayed up all night. Like, she truly means it when she was like, I will work on this until I figure it out. And
mind you, it was a language that I don't do anything with. It was JavaScript, and I do nothing with JavaScript. So
very brave.
Yeah, that's how I felt. But we made it.
April, you have a million bajillion hobbies, and we will not be able to cover them all on this show. Among them, y'all, one time April was like, I want to learn how to remix Africa by Toto, and then she signed up for a DJ class the next day. But you also have a shared passion of Barbies.
Yes.
Tell us about your Barbie hobby.
So I have my friends with me. I brought them all today.
So exciting.
I'm gonna first intro my background with Barbies. I grew up as a Barbie collector, and I was that kid whose parents bought two of the same Barbies, one to play with, one to collect. And I had a really good collection. One of my neighbors, she had like an entire bedroom dedicated to Barbies. So like I grew up in a townhouse in like one of those developments where like all the houses look the same. And so my bedroom in that woman's house was a Barbie room, and she had the whole room filled with Barbies. And I was like, oh my goodness, I want to be you when I grow up. So that's how I got into Barbie. And then I eventually ended up selling my collection. Kind of like if anyone knows like how the Beanie Baby market was and still is, that's pretty much how the Barbie market is. But in any case, I didn't do much with Barbies for a couple years after that. And then one day, I just decided to look up Barbie on social media, as most people do. And I noticed that there's an entire world where people pretty much create little mini sets and put the Barbies in different like positions and stuff, and they photograph them, and it becomes like a whole thing. And there's a whole world of people who do this. There's YouTube videos dedicated to how you can go about, I usually share like how you can rethread their hair, how you can style their hair, how you can make Barbie clothes, how you can make all of their different like accessories and stuff in the house. And so, or the room that you're working with. So if you're curious as to like what that even looks like, I'm going to share my screen so you all can see this hobby that I've gotten into. Let me get this set up for you all. So this is what I'm referring to. People actually spend hours working on things like this. What's great, and you might be wondering, for those of you who are familiar with Barbies, that Barbies historically didn't have a lot of joints. So their arms were like the way you put them. Now they make Barbies with, I forgot how many joints are part of the Barbie, but they have all these joints that you can move and pose them in different ways. And so when you see Barbies, like the one that I have on the left with the blonde hair and the sunglasses, her hand is sitting on her cheek, which traditionally you couldn't do that with a regular Barbie doll, but nowadays you can. And so you can pose them all sorts of ways, and people do this as a hobby, and I fell in love with it. And even like on the table, keep in mind, these things are Barbie size. I think it's like a 1/12 scale. So for the items that are on the table, there's like a nail file, there's like an eyelash curler, but it's not human size. Like someone's making these
Yeah.
teeny tiny objects.
Like I'm
And they're
even looking at this
tiny.
image and there's kind of a what do they call that? Like a poster board behind it, a
Yeah.
bulletin board, and I'm like, are there little
Yes.
tiny Barbie-sized push pins in there?
Yes, and there might be. So like I have a couple of examples. Like the next one, she has on a tweed jacket and she's at her computer. She has like a cell phone next to her, like in the background. She has a rack of like clothes because I'm assuming she's a fashion designer. And then like on this next one, how meta is this?
Oh my gosh.
Barbie dolls with a Barbie house.
This is blowing my mind. Are there,
Yes.
I'm zooming in. Are there little Barbies in there? No.
No,
Okay.
but that would have been great. That would have actually been really great. So like, yes, it's like, and for some of the images, depending on who makes them. So like back on the first one where her arm is bent facing on her cheek, you don't see the joint there because people will take these photos that they shoot and put them in Photoshop and they'll like edit the photos out to make it look more realistic, which is so cool. So back to my own story, I'm going to start trying that out. I bought a couple different Barbies in hopes of being diverse with all my girls. This one is bald, and this represents when I actually cut all my hair off during quarantine, because who doesn't do that during a quarantine? And then
I went with the orange, the neon orange thing, but I feel you.
It's a thing. And then I bought this one at FAO Schwartz, which is like, if you're into toys, that's like the pinnacle of toy shops. And so this one is kind of hard to see with my ring light, but it's a robotics engineer doll. And so I got her for that reason. And plus she has a laptop. So that's like one less thing that I need to get.
I have that one on my desk in the
yeah.
San Francisco Microsoft office. It's been there alone for a year, so it's probably come to
She's
life
lonely.
like Toy Story.
Yes. Then I just got this one recently. She's a looks one. I love that Mattel came out with this collection because they have different body types. The hair is great. They're more fashion forward in the way they do certain details. Also, they retail for like stupid, crazy, expensive prices once they're sold out. So I'm going to end up opening her, unfortunately. But if any of you happen to collect them, hold on to it. I love this one as well. I think she's short too. Yeah, which is great because she's, not like Barbie height, and she has a bit more more of the body shape that like I wish I had. But she also has some really nice braids. And this one, I liked her afro, and she has blue lipstick. Like, how amazing is that? And the last one, coincidentally, Chloe, you got me this one, and I also had one as well, which is perfect because now I have two of them. But this is one of the first ones, like styles they came out with, where they had all the different poses you can do. So I'm going to get into that at some point soon, hopefully, and start just making all these different Barbie sets. So I'm like really looking forward to that. And like before we hop off the Barbie information, I do want to share one other hobby I picked up lately, which is like not hobby, but a hobby. So as I was turning 31, I realized that I wasn't sure how much I wanted to be on social media. As much as I actually really love Instagram, if anything, because I love all the photos. But then I also realized that I wasn't photographing as much when I went out. And I feel that a lot of photos that were on social media were being more perfected. And I don't know if anyone follows the Instagram account Influencers in the Wild. It's a hilarious account. But like things like that, I don't mind for other people to do it, but I felt like I didn't have the time to do that. And I really love capturing moments as they are rather than what they could be. And so naturally, I went to Etsy and bought an actual vintage Polaroid camera. Cool. And it actually works. This one is from the 80s, so it's like original.
I'm already feeling like
you can lift it up. Yeah.
I haven't seen that in like 20 years.
Right. So what I've been doing whenever I go out nowadays, I try to capture at least one photo while I'm out. Sometimes I have to take two because I'm not always sure how the lighting is going to work out. But I wonder if I have like a decent picture to share with you all. I have just one that turned out actually really well. So this car It was like a picture of one. Well, I took a picture of a car that's over on Rodeo near where I live. And this one actually came out really well. And I've taken some of people, and when people hear you taking a picture of them, they're just like, oh, wait a second. I want to, get myself together. And I'm like,
Strike a
no,
pose.
I'm like, no, this is how you are right now. This is how we're taking a picture, and there's no do-over. So, and I've just been collecting Polaroid pictures and keeping them in my drawer because I want those memories. I want to look back and, remember exactly how that moment was and how it was captured. And I love that you can't edit it. I love that you don't know what it looks like until the film develops, if you will. And so, those photos, I just don't share them with anybody. They're just from my own little eyes. And so those are my current hobbies.
To middle school, maybe I'm aging myself here. We had these things called Instapics. They were
I know what
very
you're talking
small.
about. Yeah, they were tiny.
So many in my locker. April, I love that you're taking up this Barbie hobby. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm starting to see this trend. So when we were younger, April and I are about the same age, there was not a lot of girls' computer science toys or content out there. And I love this new trend of girly or feminine leaning toys that are encouraging young girls to get into computer science. The newest American Girl, Courtney, is from the 80s, and she's a game designer. It's very, for those listening, it's kind of Stranger Things aesthetic. She's got a cassette player. She's playing Pac-Man. And I have my original American Girl Macintosh. So this is something that I've kept from age, 6 or something. And it still works. It has the original Macintosh software on it. You could press the keyboard. It does little spreadsheets and constellation charts. And I think it's so important that the people making this content understand the industry, are making sure to include a diverse perspective. And I'm so excited. You have to share the handle when you get this Instagram account going.
That was the other thing. I forgot the biggest detail because when you mentioned tech and more feminine leaning. So for all the dolls and what I'm doing, they're actually all going to be tech themed. So it's just a purely Barbie tech settings, if you will, different photos. And I meant to text you back, Chloe. I'll do that after we get done today. I need help with the handle, and I need it to be something because Chloe's good at naming things. I fall short of that. So what I was looking for when I was looking to my left, I have, and I should have grabbed it. I don't think it's out here. Maybe it's in my background. Yeah, I do. I'm going to grab it really quick for everyone at home. So, because I know that Chloe loves this topic. So because I used to work in fashion, I can also sew as well. And I've been doing that since middle school. I bought a Sewing Clothes for Barbie book.
Amazing.
What are the odds, right? And it has patterns in here for different things that you can make for Barbie size. And so I'm going to be fully committed to this particular craft. And because I have a Cricut machine, you can cut out wood and everything with it. And so that's how I'll be making all her furniture and
Barbie
stuff. And
standing
then
desk. Barbie Macintosh dock, Barbie, everything.
Pretty much.
It's amazing. Yeah, because actually Rob in the comments was asking when you were going through the photos of the different Barbie scenes, and he's asking if that laptop was a 3D print and paint kind of thing. But it sounds
it might be.
Do anything.
Yeah, you can.
There's a milling machine.
Yeah, and people get really creative of how they make stuff, which is what I really appreciate. And for me personally, I have spent couple hours on Pinterest, creating a Pinterest board of real life places that I love and trying to find things that I can replicate. But it's sorry, that was my front door. But it's just a really cool thing because you can really stretch your thinking of or your creativity of how you can make stuff without defaulting going to Etsy and just buying something, because there's a whole market of people who also make all the little furniture too and accessories, which I won't get into right now. But it's a whole thing.
Just science, right? Doing things to scale, and I can only imagine, the image that you showed earlier of two Barbies at a desk with a bunch of papers, even just getting the font size correct on there, or so many different like
It's
logistical
yeah.
things.
It's a lot of it's one of those hobbies that you don't spend like 10 minutes on and you're done. Like you can spend hours. Like someone did like a time lapse on YouTube of her just creating like a room. And I think was it 3 or 5 hours that she took just doing that one room. So I love that. I love that it takes time. I love that I have a lot of time dedicated towards it because I'm not writing books right now and I'm not taking on anything extracurricular. So outside of like my work life, I just have a lot of free time now. And what I think I love most about it too is that I'm doing it for fun. I don't want any like financial gain from it because I feel like once you add that to the mix, that's when it starts to become less fun. So I'm just doing it just to like have it. Now, where will this live in my home? I don't know. We'll figure out. I have a blank wall in front of me. I saw someone's Instagram account recently that does these, but not Barbie, but she just makes like little like mini homes and stuff. And she has like an entire row on a wall of like little mini houses where she just goes and change them out every so often. So I might do something like that. We'll see. But I can't wait because it'll be tech themed. And it's like, how many, like, I know there's like, as far as I know, there's like a Tech Barbie Instagram account, but like to be able to see this collective group of Barbies working together in tech. And like for me, getting Black Barbies was super important because like growing up, those were the only ones, well, not the only ones, because I had some that were like multicultural from different parts of the world, but most of my collection were Black Barbie dolls. And so I always feel it's important to get, you know, more minorities in tech. But now to have like this Barbie account, if you will, that depicts that in that form, and they all look different. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'll slowly start incorporating some of the other, I don't want to say Mattel calls them races, but for lack of better terms, more races into it as well. But I mean, right now I have 6 Barbie dolls, so I'm gonna play with those first, and then I'll start adding ones to the mix. So
I already know
yeah.
the attention to detail on this account. Like we're gonna look over a Barbie's shoulder and they're gonna be logged into Teams and have like a mini Word
Yes,
document and
because I
Clippy in
would
the
do
corner.
that. I
Spinning
would
up a
do
website on
that.
Azure.
Yeah, and I
Azure
and I think I
portal.
want to. I think I want to like document it all. So more than just like the Barbie style account that I showed, they just only show like the finished product. I think I want to do more by like actually doing like short Instagram reels, for example, of like how to make certain pieces, and then of course show the final product. But I think it's one of those things where you don't need a perfect photo to show process. You know, I mean, the only perfect photo you need is the end result. And so I like that. I love that for me. So
I love this comment in the chat, which I'm sure you can relate to, April, which is from Rob that says, I play board games in VR, and I love how you
Mhm.
can pick up virtual objects and just see all the
Yes.
cool intricacies. I catch the same
Yes.
vibe on those Barbie diorama things. And
Yes.
I think you probably kind of do that a lot in your own mixed
Yeah,
reality and
for
VR
work.
work.
Yeah. When you're working with, it all comes down to 3D modeling, which is in no way my forte. I've tried it. I gave up. But there are folks who, you know, who do make the 3D models and stuff, and you can make things very, very detailed. And so like for me, coming up, what I'll be making, I'm going to try 2 different ways. I'm going to do a VR as well as an AR version with the HoloLens, and then the VR for Oculus Quest of a bowling alley, and the ability to like pick up a bowling ball, roll it, and hit pins and keep score and everything. So there's not too much detail with the bowling ball, you know, or the pins, but being able to create games like that, which is like typical work that I do, which is why I love what I do. But I've also done like a mixed reality museum. The Smithsonian, for those of you who aren't familiar, the Smithsonian, many, many years ago, it was a family who donated museums, at least in the DC area, as far as I know. That's it. But they're all free for the general public to go to attend. If it's a Smithsonian museum, not all DC museums, but just Smithsonian ones. In any case, they came out with a 3D a collection of 3D models that are royalty free, and you can use them in any of your projects. And so I ended up using a pair of boots from The Wiz, of like The Wiz's boots. And you can, if you pick it up, there's just so much detail. And on the bottom, you can see that it's written that says The Wiz on it. And so I just love how detailed you can get when you're making 3D models. And, I've also just done some VR things that just feel real, which is like another thing. Like I played, if anyone out there has ever played Richie's Plank, there's two different versions of it. There's like, well, I mean, regardless, it's all kind of scary, depending on if you're afraid of heights. But there's a scary mode where you end up in like this dark room and there's like this Resident Evil style zombie sort of thing, like walking towards you, and then it runs towards you. And so like that felt real because you're in the dark and you kind of forget that you're in VR. But I went on a tangent there. But it's also why I like working in the area where I work, because you can really escape from what's happening around you. And this year I'll be doing more with VR. So if anyone's working in that area, especially if you're a beginner and you want to learn more of how to develop for VR, I will be your go-to as we're heading into this new year at work. So we got that going on soon.
I just love the idea of making an indoor bowling alley in your home more accessible, because growing up in 90s television, very like I'm thinking like First Kid, Blank Check. They all had a bowling alley
Alley
inside
Cat
their home.
Strike, but even though that was like not in their
Yes.
house. Yeah.
I feel like now it's almost like open sourcing bowling alleys for homes. I love that.
Yes.
A free bowling alley in
Yes.
every home.
Which, by the way, whenever I do create projects for work, I always post it in a repo on GitHub, because there's nothing I can do with it beyond make it, but I always post these things. So for people who are watching content that I do, because I always do my YouTube videos, like an actual like super thorough walkthrough. Once it's posted, go take it, go do whatever with the code that you want. If you decide to turn it into like an award-winning game app, then by all means, like go do that. I do it to help folks who who need that start somewhere. And that's what I really love about the work that I do, because for me, I do a lot more with beginners. And so I like being able to provide that foundation for them to get started with whatever area of XR that they're working in. And I'm happy when I know people are actually watching the content or reading the content and actually using it. That makes me most happy. And if I can do that and you're satisfied with it, great. If you honestly just going through it, even if you don't like it, to know that you've gone through a tutorial and you ran into a problem, at least lets me know that you actually went through the tutorial and people are actually, looking at the stuff that I put out into the world. But hopefully you don't run into issues. So yeah, that's my philosophy on the work that I do.
Absolutely.
I love it. Now, there is a new movie coming out that you've had some partnership with.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Because
are we allowed to talk
out?
About
yeah,
okay.
it's out. And, well, the movie's not
so
out
jealous.
yet, but the work I did is out.
Yes.
Yeah, so tell us about that. What's the movie?
So Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. And Microsoft did a collaboration with Warner Brothers for the movie. There were Learn modules that were created. And one of the modules that I contributed to was a mixed reality app of a player roster for the Toon Squad characters. And so essentially, if you have on, I did mine for HoloLens. If you have on the HoloLens, when you start the app, you can see all the players in like squares. And then if you were to select like Elmer Fudd, for example, it would show his stats. And the one stat that we use in the example is the player efficiency rating, which pretty much depicts how good the player is. And so you can tap it, see it, and you can close it. And the whole purpose was to explore different features of the mixed reality toolkit, which is toolkit that I primarily use in my work. It helps accelerate your mixed reality development, and there's a lot of features included where if you're familiar with Unity, the engine, it's kind of almost like not drag and drop, because there's not quite necessarily drag and drop, but you can just add the components from the mixed reality toolkit. Saves a lot of time and not start from scratch. So like for my project, we use a lot of buttons. And so, it's one thing to create a button from scratch, which you can totally do, or you can use like pre-made buttons. I demonstrated both actually in the Learn module. So that way you can learn how to do from scratch and also how to use the prefabs that are included. And so that's a collaboration that we did. And that project, oh my goodness. So what I created learning lesson is to make sure that you can actually thoroughly create what you say you want to do before committing to it. Because the idea came from an existing app. And I quickly realized that it didn't do 100% what I wanted to do. And I had to create a much more simpler version, or I guess more approachable version of creating from scratch. And I did some pair programming with one of the developers over on the mixed reality team to solve some issues. I think we took like 2 or 3 days just to pair program. We didn't quite find a resolution. And then one day I sat there, I went through every line of code in the scripts that I had available from the original project. And lo and behold, I figured it out. And so, like when you figure out an issue when you're programming, you feel like the smartest person in the world at that point. And that's how I felt. And of course, like no one was around to know, because that's how it always is. But that was a nice lesson learned. So yeah, I finished it though. It's on Microsoft Learn. If you happen to be on Learn and you're browsing through the catalog, if you type in Space Jam, that's going to docs.microsoft.com/learn. If you search for Space Jam, there's a learning path available on there. And 2 other folks, Sarah Guthels, Dr. Guthels, she led everything. So she also created Learn modules as well for the collaboration. And then Cassie, I don't want to mess up her last name. Is it Review? Yes. She also contributed. She did a Babylon JS version of what I created. So if working with web is more your thing, you can check out her version of the Learn module. It's within that learning path. And yeah, that's what I worked on recently, and I love it.
I have an exclusive announcement. Starting in August, myself and Ornella will be walking through Cassie's module with the Reactor. So I'm going to learn all about basketball, y'all.
Yes.
What is it? The PE, player efficiency.
PER.
PER. Yeah. Well, did you ever think in a million years, April, that first of all, you'd be working in tech, and second of all, that you'd be like moving around a Lola bunny with your hands and your code? Like, was that ever anything in your line of sight when choosing your college major or your career or anything like that?
Not in the least bit. And like I went to college. Well, I went to college for a lot of things, but the major that I ended up with at the end of the day was global business and public policy, which is a fancy title for international business. And then for grad school, I got my master's in luxury and fashion management. So neither tech related. And I feel, honestly, I actually use both degrees in my job now. And so even though I do a lot of creating tutorial content and apps, at the end of the day, because like we have like jobs where there is like an actual outcome and goals that we need to meet, I'm very business oriented. And so understanding how to strategize around the work that I do and then helping out our team in the work that we do, that's where that business background comes into play. And then when you're doing business, there's also the marketing side of stuff as well. So amplifying whatever it is that you create in our case. And then for the luxury and fashion management background, we had an entire course that we like dedicated to Adobe Creative Suite. And so knowing how to use those different products and tools is really helpful. Understanding the design process too, because for the area where I work and like really all the areas that we work in tech where there's a visual component to it, you really have to understand the designing principles around it. And so understanding color and things of that nature, it's very important in my role. So even though my degree isn't necessarily computer science, I still use both of my degrees in my job. And it's a matter of finding transferable skills and applying them to the job that I have.
I just can't get over, at the beginning of this episode, you mentioned that you could move a shirt a couple inches to the right and it would go off the shelf. I can't get over how translatable that is to building software. Like, truly, it's a matter of like changing a button color, or moving it, or making it more accessible or within your frame of view. I can only imagine how many times this has just popped up throughout your tech career of like, oh, that's nifty.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, and for those of you who are either you're starting out or you're considering transitioning, just really think about the skills you do have. And honestly, sometimes you might not have the skills that you need heading into the next your next step. And like for me, heading into mixed reality, I didn't do anything mixed reality. I mean, I had to learn a whole new programming language. I had to learn C#. So you might not have everything, but it's really great to to use what you do have and then recognize what might be your weaknesses and do all that you can to strengthen them. Also, and I love to let people know this, I know it's not the case for every job that you might walk into or go into, but you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be an expert in a certain area. Like literally in 2 weeks, I'm spending most of my time only doing VR, like learning VR stuff, and that's it. So there's opportunities to learn on a job, and don't feel like you can't apply until you're like expert level in the area. There will be times to still learn new things.
Such a good message. And also, yeah, just like you said earlier, your degree doesn't define you, or your lack of degree doesn't define you. Just because you graduated with a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree or didn't even do it doesn't mean you can't get into new things and learn new things. I mean, I'd say if anything April taught us today is just we can learn anything we put our mind to. We're always learning. We're always evolving. It's just been such an amazing conversation, April. I'm so inspired. We only have a couple minutes left. Unfortunately, this has been an amazing conversation. But for the people at home, where can they find you? Where can they follow more of April's wisdom?
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Vogue and Code. We do have it here in this conversation, but for those of you who are listening, VOGUEANDCODE. That's also my Instagram account, and that's likely where I'll let folks know when this Barbie Instagram account exists. And so you can check me out there.
Soon. We'll make sure to update everyone on the show.
Soon. Yes. And my website, vogueandcode.com. That's where I have my contact information. If you have any questions, and it's info@vogueandcode.com. So that's where you can find me. And if you happen to be in LA, you can likely find me outside somewhere, probably over on Rodeo, since I live very close. So
April, I cannot wait to visit you and go to the Cheesecake Factory. It's been way too long since I've given you a hug.
Bread. Yes.
I'm going to let Brandon close out the show because there's a helicopter outside my window that's very loud.
And there's like cops outside mine. So
oh gosh. Well, hopefully everybody stays safe, but thank you, everyone, for joining us again this week. I'm your host, Brandon Minnick, with Chloe Condon and April Speight. Please visit us next week. We'll be here at the same time. Make sure to go to 8bits.tv to subscribe to the podcast. Give us a rating, 5 stars, leave a great review, help other people find it, and we will see you next week.